And we are live. Welcome, friends, to another episode of the Collectors Series. I am very grateful to have my friend Aaron here from SlabMags, the other half of SlabMags. We had Nate earlier. Aaron, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, man, I'm pumped. I love these collectors episodes. Talking about cards is my favorite thing. So, I mean, it's a perfect situation here, right?
Right. No, just talking about cards and why we love to collect them. And sometimes there's value associated with that, and sometimes there's not. I think in a lot of these conversations I've been having, it's not always the most valuable cards that are the most important cards to a collector. So
Definitely.
It's really fun to understand why that is. But first, let's start with this. I mean, everybody sees you on the internet, on the Instagram and social media. I've got a really, really, really cool story behind you with SlabMags. I've told Nate this. You're the first stop for me in my hobby return. I didn't know anybody else. I started listening to Dinging Corners with you and Nate talking about Marco Luciano and Julio Rodriguez, and
forever ago.
I a long time ago, and I think it was just a podcast. It wasn't even a YouTube channel, but I went and bought Julio because I already knew about Julio anyway because I'm here in Seattle. But It was really cool hearing about the Bowman Chrome stuff, and that kind of got me hooked. And so I have you guys to thank for that, and I've been listening to you guys since. You just got great quality content. So people know when they see you, you're a hobby leader in that sense. You put out really good stuff. But how did you get into collecting? I think people might have heard this story, but let's back up and unpack this whole thing.
Yeah, why not? Why not? I think it was quite a long time ago. Like maybe I had my first interaction with cards when I was like under 5, right? You just got some cards in your possession. But I do remember, clearly a couple times. One, like Nate would always have cards at his garage show with his brothers. So I know I'd walk across the street, and that's how I know Nate. I grew up across the street from him.
Right.
And buy a couple Packers cards. And also, my grandma had cards from a while ago, 1977 Topps, which they're actually not like from when she was a kid, but more from when my mom was a kid. And then I kind of got those in my possession and started to piece them out, buying and selling with those cards to build my collection from there around when I was like probably 8 to 10 years old. And then the really big grasp for me into the hobby was in 2008. My brother and I, we just moved to Minnesota with my parents, and we walked into Target, and they had 2008 Topps football just released, but we were in Viking territory now, going from Wisconsin to Minnesota. And Brett Favre's on the cover of the set. So I'm just like, oh, I got to get this. Like, this is so cool. Like Packers stuff in a Minnesota Target, like 8-year-old Darren was like fired up about that. So I buy a blaster box and ripping the packs and just having fun with it. And then, eventually within a couple months, I started to look at the cards more and find out that one of the cards I had, in a Beckett manual, as I started to get those, as I started to get more intrigued and stuff, was like a $30 book value card. Is a Matt Ryan no helmet SP rookie card. They're actually super, super rare. There might only be like one on eBay. I don't have the card today because I did use it actually to go to a card show and trade for some of my first rookie cards of like Aaron Rodgers, Kevin Durant, who's my favorite basketball player at the time. Now I don't really like him at all, and then Kobe as well. So I used this card to see that there's value in other cards, and I think dropped his phone.
No, wow, someone calls me, and every time someone calls me, it kicks me off but it doesn't happen that often. Go ahead, keep going.
You're all good. So I use the Matt Ryan to then acquire different cards in my collection. Then it sent me to my first card show. My dad in Minnesota, I was like, Dad, you got to take me here. He actually wasn't into the cards. I got him into cards throughout the last few years now. But he would be going to all these shows with me, and he'd always be looking for baseballs and mini helmets and all this stuff of his favorite Packers and Brewers players and such. Yeah. But that's really how I started collecting. And then through high school into college, really started to apply these more bigger thinking principles. I guess they're not that crazy, but just going through like different high school classes and college business classes, started thinking about how these cards can be bought and sold, for profit in like Bowman Chrome markets, as we were talking about, and then also really taking like my skill set and what I've learned from my dad. He was running a media company at the time, applying that to SlabMags to then build out a media company for sports cards. So it's just a culmination of a lot of stuff between family, collecting, learning in school, learning from my dad, that sent me into starting SlabMags, and also wanting to create, at the time, a technical platform to track the values of cards on, which ended up not working out. However, it had me start the media company. It had us, me build multiple relationships with tons of people, and then in the end, Card Ladder now has a great platform that we use for all of our content. So it all worked out.
It all worked out. Yeah, no, that's impressive. It sounds like it started out with 2008 Topps football, Brett Favre on the cover of a blaster, and it developed into, you know, one of the leading hobby content creators, businesses. It's amazing to see. So you walk in, you start building out slab stocks. What happens when you see this boom, the pandemic boom? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of people, I think a lot of people look at the businesses and the hobby and the breakers in the hobby. And a lot of people are like, oh, they got in when it got hot type of thing, right? Well, like I've been collecting for 15 plus years now. Started the business really in like, I want to say it was like around 2018, somewhere in that realm, 2017 to 2018. And that was pre-boom. That was even, I would say it was getting hot before the big boom come COVID. I'd say there's about 6 months where like, you know, people were starting to talk about sports cars more. You know, obviously Gary Vee started talking about them a little bit more. And then the pandemic hits about a year later after that point. And that is really what sent it crazy. Now, like it was a really different position because for myself, enjoying cards my whole life, there's not really a lot of people for, you know, the 10 years prior to that I knew that even collected cards, enjoyed cards. There's basically no one other than who you see walking in a hobby shop, who you see at a card show. But at that point, there's no social media really in a big capacity. So you're not like connecting with these people on a daily basis. You see maybe once a month or less. And then when it came to the pandemic really jolting the hobby into this new stratosphere, it was like, whoa, cards are cool again. A lot of people care about them. All this different stuff where like it's things that I never, or if it was going to get to that point, I was like, oh, maybe 5-10 years later for whatever reason. But within about a 2-year period, it turned from something that I was hoping to, you know, break through the mold and talk about more in like a media sense and like a public sense. And then it really goes crazy with the pandemic. We were positioned perfectly at that point because we took the 2 prior years to, you know, start building out the company, the media and all that stuff. So it's important, you know, to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you it's what do they say? Preparation and plus opportunity. Preparation meets luck and a little bit of opportunity, and the next thing you know, you can capitalize on it. You had to be prepared and ready for it. You couldn't just all of a sudden put something together, which a lot of folks probably did, but you guys were obviously well into it well before. Right. Yeah, I mean, I started listening to you guys in late 2019. That was my experience or my intro into it. So you were doing it well before everything really started cooking. So now the boom's happened and it comes back down. What have you learned coming in and out of that through the hobby? What has been the biggest lesson for you?
Man, first of all, I can't believe that we hit the heights that we did. Like I never thought I'd get to that point. So like I'm really happy with where the market is in the first place. Like being that there's so many people that enjoy cards today and are still ripping packs, are still trading, still going to shows. Like I think that peak is always going to be that thing that was like, oh my gosh, that was just, I can't believe that happened. Where it's not like, you know, I don't sit here today, and I know a lot of people who probably left the hobby are like, oh, remember when sports cards were cool? Remember when like, you know, we were able to make money at this and that? Like I see it as like, you know, a 15-10 year thing where I'm looking back and I'm like, wow, it's came so far since then, and there's still a long way to go. So I'm not, you know, I don't really look at that giant decrease in the graphs and such as like sports cards are dead. I will never look at it like that. Now I probably have bias, you know, collecting all these years, owning a business in the space, wanting to succeed and being happy with where it is. But at the same point, I'm excited about it. As for learning, the learnings are interesting because I think that a lot of it does have to do with like not overreacting to things, either if it's content based, if it's card price based, whatever it is. Like we've shared thousands of social posts, and we're almost at our like 1,000th podcast episode, I think, coming up here soon too, over the last 5 years. And like, I would say that like there are people that overreact to things by buying and selling, but for us, it's like never taking anything too harshly or never, you know, looking at trend and saying that that's going to last forever. I think that the biggest learning is always knowing that either something will come to an end, be it like the base trend, be it all these other ones, or knowing that there will always be something next. You know, there'll always be something new to talk about. And it's constantly like I've produced like it turns into like probably like 25 Instagram posts a week almost in some sense, or 20 Instagram posts in a week, and like multiply that over 5 years, that's like 4,000, 5,000 something posts. And like, there's always something to talk about, which always impresses me. I'm always like, man, what are we going to talk about the next day, But there's always something. There's always a new set. There's always a new sale. There's Prism Monopoly craze. Like there's always something fun. So always getting ready for the next thing. And that's not saying like jumping to the next thing, like spending money on it. It's just like discussion based. Like there's always ways to keep people engaged in discussing, which is really important, I think.
So what do you think, and this is like a question you probably fielded a few times, how does Fanatics, you know, what is the Fanatics entry into the space? Do you think there's Fanatics Live that's coming out? What are your thoughts on Fanatics Live and Fanatics being a part of the hobby? How is that is it going to be more of a monopoly when it comes to licensing and product? You're excited about Topps Chrome coming back to basketball and football. I mean, how do you feel about Fanatics entering the space?
Yeah, I'm excited about a lot of what Fanatics is bringing to the hobby. I think that it's a lot of new and they're taking the time to look at what has happened in the last 5 years and how products were developed and thinking about how they can be developed better and more engaging for the customer. Like, I know that I was in the big league set, so I paid a little bit more attention to big league than maybe the rest of the people did. But like in big league, like the fact that a kid can pull a card and it's a Mike Trout follow back card and they could get followed back by Mike Trout. And I think that thing ended up selling for like $4,000 on eBay or something like that.
Yeah.
So does the kid really have it? I don't know. But the point is that, things like that being in the set is really cool that we haven't seen done before. And that Fanatics has relationships with so many different athletes, so many different teams out there that I think is going to provide a lot more opportunities for game used memorabilia, which has been such a big problem in the last 5 years, or even 2 years mostly in the hobby with what Panini is doing with National Treasures and such and Immaculate. It's going to provide a lot more opportunities for things like that. You see the Caitlin Clark and Wembanyama news coming out where they're going to have their first autographs. That is a very new thing that's happening in the space, having players who, are in some essence, 2 years off the professional trajectory like Caitlin Clark. I mean, now like a year and a half or so, but having cards and autographs while they're playing collegiate NIL was a huge benefit for that because it's illegal before, or I guess against NCAA rules. But this is exciting, new things coming to the hobby. You brought up the monopoly thing, and they do own a lot of the different licenses in the space for the next 10 years or so, whatever the timeline is. And I think it will definitely keep the pressure on for them, knowing that well, yes, they could neglect, things and just say, oh, we own it all, so we can do whatever we want. I think that they will have to listen to what the consumers want because they actually have such a big stake in it. If you think about how they're dealing out the rights when they acquired all these different things, like they acquired it towards the peak of the graphs for singles purposes. And there's a lot of pressure on for everyone that's involved to have it succeed. And it's not going to succeed if they don't listen to the hobby. If they don't, help collectors and help card shops and all these different things and connect the right people to products, that are here to benefit the space, benefit like building community, engaging content is what I'm saying, not benefit themselves. So I think that they're going to do all those right things, and it's going to maybe take some time to show through completely because obviously there's transitions between who has licenses when are products being created. Is it an old Topps product that's delayed that was built with the old regime? Is it a new one? It's just like a lot of different things like that. I think they're going to take time to fully mature, but they have the keys and the tools to do it well and to do it right for the hobby. And my hope and what I think is that it will.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I think any kind of they're going to find ways to engage more people, engage the kids. I'd love to see more of that at the stadiums and baseball stadiums.
Yeah, that's huge.
Baseball. It's a big deal, and I see cards kind of being handed out more often now. You go to the stadiums; it's pretty neat. I think
they got like Topps trucks at all these stadiums or something.
Yeah,
like different stadiums like that. And I saw they did some big activation at F1 this year for Miami, which was way different than what I experienced when I was in the Netherlands. There's like nothing that was kind of like new or engaging there, but at F1 they're handing out these really cool exclusive cards, having like live breaks and such like that, giving out sapphire packs. So they're doing a lot, I feel.
So let's segue into that conversation. Let's unpack that comment on F1. I mean, there's been a lot of people talking about F1. Is it it's a sort of a fringe sport? I mean, it might be, but it seems kind of like it's picking up speed. Is it you think it as a hobby or as a sport, something that people pay attention to more?
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, people, including myself, pay attention way more now than they did 3 years ago. Like I started watching 2 years ago. I've watched 2 full seasons, and now this year I've watched every race. I'm a big fan. Me and my family are big fans of it. My dad and I went to a race last year. It was an extremely fun time. It's not for everyone, definitely. I think that there's some struggle going on right now with the competition in the sport. Like Red Bull's won every single race this year. There's not that much. Like 2 years ago when it was Lewis and Max, like alternate who's winning races, big title push, all that stuff, way more exciting, and it really jolted a lot of people in the space. Now, as we know, any sport, any card, any trend, when too many people come to something at one time and start spending money in that capacity, it really runs those cards or items up fast, and that is what happened. And there's been definitely massive, decreases in value, crashes in value. Some of the cards I own are worth way less than they were when I bought them. For me though, I love the sport. I love the drivers. I'm a fan of it. I wouldn't tell anyone to ever buy something unless you're a fan of it, unless you're willing to watch all the races, like all that different type of stuff. So I think that it just comes down to the individual and what you're doing, but it's definitely considered, in my opinion, a fringe thing. And then the other problem, I don't want to say problem, but just difficulty F1 faces is like, in baseball, 2023 Bowman baseball was released. Well, how many new prospects were in there that are worth chasing after? 25 plus for sure, and in F1, you're looking at maybe 1 or 2 new drivers in a season. This year there's 3, but how many are going to be desirable? Not a whole lot. Anyways, that's a problem or a difficulty about F1 is that there's not that many new chases every single year.
Yeah, it's all condensed into those 2 drivers or 3 drivers. And so, it makes the rest of the product kind of obsolete, and you're just basically chasing just 3 people. So let's talk about your PC then. So you have a PC. Yeah. I'm sure you have a PC. So tell me what's in your PC. How many slabs do you have? What's the most important, like in your top 10? What are cards that matter the most to you and why?
Okay. So I don't necessarily have a number on how many cards are in my PC or how many slabs. I mean, it depends. I'll tell you what the makeup is. Okay, so there's a lot of Brewers cards in there. Not a whole lot purchased recently. Honestly, a lot of those are from the 2017, 18 heyday when I was in college. I mean,
yeah.
Give me 1 second. I got to turn off this music. I don't know what happened here. Sorry.
You're fine. I've been dropping my phone like 3 times. You can probably get up and go have lunch at this point. This is a hobby podcast, and with hobby podcasts, we're a little more relaxed.
Man, Alexa just starts playing music in the other room. I mean, what the heck? Okay, so I think it's like Shawn Mendes or something like that. So basically, what makes up the PC? You got the Brewers cards. I still watch the Brewers all the time right now. You see some Hank Aaron stuff up behind me there. I got a lot of Yelich and Kane stuff from our really good years when we were pushing for the World Series, didn't make it. And then a couple of some prospect cards. And then I have like a Giannis card in there right now, which I'm not tied to. Giannis is like my favorite athlete of all time. I have a nice cracked ice auto of him, but that one I'd be okay with moving. I've had various Giannis cards throughout the year, but the thing about Giannis is that his stuff just got so expensive. It was easy to PC him when he was really cheap. I was buying cards when I was like, what was I, like 15 years old when he was a rookie for like $10 when they're autographed and stuff? Like, that's ridiculous. Like, they're like thousands now for those rookies. But it's tough to PC something as time goes on, and you see the values build and build and build. And you're like, I bought that card for $10 at one point. How am I going to buy that card for $1,000 now? So that's why the Giannis PC for me isn't really there. Is because of how valuable they are. But I have a ton of Chelsea cards. I'm a huge Chelsea fan. I don't know how many people listening to this even care about soccer, but I've been to Europe multiple times, England multiple times. And I do love me some Chelsea cards. I got some stuff to share here. And then Hank Aaron, I got Hank Aaron rookie in my PC, SGC 3. So I bought this, at the 2019 National. That's a card I've chased ever since I was just starting to collect. Could never afford like a 3 for like $200. They were probably back like 15 years ago, 12 years ago. Bought one at the 2019 National, which was a good decision. 2 vintage cards. These 2 will not be leaving my collection. Jackie 5. This is a Mason Mount 1 of 1. That's from Obsidian. I actually bought that for my friend in England. So he lives in Brighton. He took me to a Brighton match, and I bought this from him at the match because I saw him at the card show out there when I was there, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna bring it to the match." So that's a fun little memory buy card at a match. And then there's one of my favorite Yelich cards. It's a super fractor. Actually, I have the full rainbow of this prize performers auto, and it's a super, super nice card.
That's a really cool card.
Yep. And then I know that your guy Dustin, big Stranger Things fan. So this is the only card I actually am going to say is in my PC from this. I have a few others that got graded, just haven't moved them yet. But this is the Dear Billy Chapter 4 Blue Shimmer numbered out of 11 PSA 8. I'll get that regret SGC here, but this is my favorite Stranger Things episode probably of all time. And I actually have a T-shirt that matches this card with Max raising up in the sky. There, do you watch Stranger Things, or are you not a Stranger Things guy?
I've watched the first 2 seasons.
Okay,
yeah, definitely a really cool show.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love the show. It's one of my favorites of all time. And my parents and I watched all these seasons multiple times. And this, like I said, is my favorite episode ever. And they made these really cool poster cards based off of Butcher Billy is his name, the artist. And that is like literally one of my favorite cards. And I'll PC that for a long time. But I got a lot of other Stranger Things cards, autographs. Some will be moved here and there along in the future. But lots of Chelsea cards, lots of Brewers cards, and some nice Stranger Things ones really that are in the PC. And then how can I forget? We talked about F1 Pierre Gasly. I've got some of the best Pierre Gasly cards actually ever made. Not to say those won't be moved eventually, but I have some that I'll keep. I know into the future. But those
So
are, you know, some of my favorite things.
So you have pure Gasly?
Yeah,
That's your F1 racer that you've
that's my guy. That's how I really got into it, through my brother. Really, my brother got my dad and I into it 2.5 years ago and he was his favorite driver. You know, he was like, "Oh, go watch some of the YouTube videos." And I'm like, he had his first win. It was super emotional and stuff like that. So I watched him and became a fan along with my brother. So
very cool, very cool. So with all of these cards, you have a lot of SGC slabs. I know you have a partnership with SGC, but do you just find that they're? I find their slabs look really good. They just sharp looking.
yeah. So don't get me wrong. There's some slabs in my collection that are PSA graded, right? Like this.
Mm-hmm.
This one right here, and such like that. Like I'm not gonna buy PSA, but as you know, we have the partnership with SGC. I've worked with them directly for nearly 2 years now. I've experience working with a lot of companies in the hobby, like top companies that run all the different services.
Right.
SGC, in my opinion, runs the best company out of all of them. Peter is one of the most wonderful leaders in the hobby. He cares a lot about the hobby. He is a really, really good person, and SGC runs a great company for the consumer and the hobbyist specifically, which is why I love him so much. And also, throughout the years, yes, I mean, the slabs grow on me a lot. Like, I think that every single SGC slab makes it look like it's a framed piece of art, in my opinion.
It does more than any other slab. It really looks sharp.
Like, this Hank Aaron right here, I literally feel like I'm holding up like a museum piece of art. I know it's only a 3, and a 10 would probably actually be a museum piece, but like I just love it. It has grown on me a lot, and also the consistency in their grading is massive. Like I know that everyone has their own opinions and everyone how they grade cards, every single company. I'm not going to break that down, but just from like what I see from card to card to card to card, like they are so consistent across their company, because I think Peter and the team take so much time and care so much about all, you know, working on the same standards. I think that you see a lot of inconsistencies elsewhere. But yeah, SGC, you know, I'm a fan, huge fan, obviously, as a lot of people know.
Well, yeah, but in the SGC and the vintage market, those 2 baseball cards, I mean, I think they would outsell a PSA slabbed card in the same.
Yeah, and when it comes to the vintage baseball, you know, the buyers, they know, they're like, hey, I'm going to look at the card. Like, this is one of the most perfectly centered vintage cards I've seen. This Jackie is beautiful. I bought it for the fact it was super well centered. I think this would outsell a lot of PSA 6s because of how it looks.
Correct.
It's just amazing.
I mean, you got to have a Jackie. I mean, it's a beautiful piece, and it's a great collection. It's a great piece to have in any PC. Jackie Robinson's one of the most important people of our history. He's someone in the baseball community you got to own. I mean, you're making me think. I'm a big Ken Griffey Jr. guy, obviously, so I really need to find a Jackie at some point, because it's funny because in my family I have a history. Jackie kind of has an interesting spot in my family. My growing up, as we talked about, you know, our Catholic heritages. My family, my dad's dad, my grandpa was one of 9 boys and 2 girls in their family. And my great grandpa had a brother who had 9 girls and 2 boys, and there was, you know, a priest and a nun. You know, we were all feeding the church, but we're also building this big family. And my grandpa and his 8 brothers had a baseball team, and they played semi-pro baseball back in like the late 40s and early 50s. And 5 of them were drafted. My grandpa was drafted by the New York Yankees and went to camp with Joe DiMaggio and all that. It was really cool.
Well, this is cool.
Yeah, no, really neat stuff, right? And 2 of my great uncles, my uncle Lawrence, he was drafted by the Brooklyn Dodgers, and so was my uncle Nick. He was drafted by the Dodgers, and my uncle Dick was drafted by the Cardinals. But my uncle Lawrence, he actually played in. I have a little picture of him in the other room. He played for the Dodgers. He went the furthest. My grandpa got hurt in the woods, couldn't play any longer. Obviously, that worked out fine for me, because then he married my grandma and had me. I wouldn't even be here if he kept playing baseball. I always thought that was cool. Like, hey, Grandpa, it would have been so cool if you played baseball. Yeah, you wouldn't be here if I played baseball. Your dad wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be
Sorry,
here.
Dad.
So, you better be happy it all happened. It all worked the way it was supposed to. But my great uncle Lawrence was a shortstop and a second baseman. He was an infielder, a really good infielder. And he got as far as Mobile, Alabama, and and you remember Branch Rickey back in the day. This is before you could, you know, get yourself out of. He basically owned your rights. The reserve clause was still there, so you're basically stuck. And he was ready to jump up, and he could have probably gotten on a major league roster, but he was blocked by Jackie Robinson in the late 40s to the early 50s when he was in his prime, and he couldn't get up there because Jackie was in his way. And I always thought it was the coolest thing. And he always told the story that was like, yeah, but it was one of the best things that ever happened because Jackie got to play and I didn't get to play. And that was okay because that was important for him to play. really neat story that, I've never shared before, but I always find it to be, I see that picture of him in this Dodgers uniform. And I'm like, he could have been a Brooklyn Dodger. He could have been playing in the late 40s, early 50s when all that cool stuff was going on. But, Jackie was there, and Jackie was more important. And it was more important that Jackie was there. And he even recognized that. So really cool. Baseball is so awesome. The romantic side of it is just, it's beyond, I could go on for days, but that Jackie card is beautiful, man. It's really cool you have that. You're making me feel like I need to target one of those at some point. And
that's a great story. Hey, just to interrupt you, that's a great story, and I appreciate you sharing that. That's super cool.
Yeah, it's the cool thing about my family. It's big, it's strong, and it's very, very religious, very faith. It gives me tremendous. It's a tremendous foundation for me in my life, and doing everything I do. None of them collected cards back then and had a big old stash of cards in the deck. I always go through Grandpa's stuff, like, you didn't have any Mickey Mantles? Like, none? You didn't grab
Grandpa, you could have gotten these signed by all of them. Like, come on.
Yeah, come on. You didn't grab a ball or something, but yeah, it's the stories I used to, my grandpa used to, this is becoming more my story. It's supposed to be about you, not me, but he roomed with Gil McDougall, and Gil McDougall became the second baseman for the Yankees all through the 50s with Mickey Mantle and all those runs. But he was like one of his friends all the way through the years. And he just, Babe Ruth, I think died right after he got signed. No, that's not true. So as my grandpa got older, some of the stories kind of got commingled, and it was kind of like, I was a little off on the years there, Gramps. I don't think that was happening, but yeah, it was really cool. And baseball is a huge part of our upbringing. Always watching the Mariners. I mean, that's all we watch is the Mariners. And going over there and sitting with all the great uncles and hearing all the stories about baseball, because a lot of them have passed on. My grandpa's passed on as of last year, and most of them have passed on. There's only one left. But going over there and sitting in that room at my grandma's house when all of the brothers would be together, because they're all very tight and close knit. You talk about brothers back then; they all got along. They all worked together as a logging company. So they all worked together. They all raised their families. Every one of them had 6 kids. You know how that goes. Bunch, big, huge families. I got 4 myself, so I'm kind of doing the same thing. But they get together and they talked about logging. They talked about faith, and they talked about baseball. Those are the 3 things they always talked about. And it was so cool to hear the stories about how it was back then, how professional sports were back then. And of course, the racism, all that stuff was awful. Don't get me wrong, awful. And they commented how unfortunate that was, because they knew there's so many other players that are so much better. They didn't get an opportunity to play, and it's interesting hearing that recollection and that sort of like having that conversation with all of these older men way later in their years, talking about how that was wrong, how it was unfortunate, how you see all these great players now, and it could have been different. But then hearing the stories about what it was like playing in the minor leagues and all that, it was a different time. It was just fascinating. And so I just consider myself very lucky to be able to witness a lot of that. Obviously, it's born in my passion of baseball and cards and playing and all of it. I get sucked into it. I'm a big baseball historian. So I know we're way off tangent, but that Jackie Robinson definitely sparked it for me. It makes me, vintage cards are a neat thing. But it kind of comes back to just not buying it so much as only as an investment, but as having it, like you said, having a piece of history in your hand.
Yeah, 100%.
Because that card's a piece of history.
I agree for sure.
Good stuff, man. Well, okay, so let's wrap this up with one more question for you. Okay, people are coming into this hobby. You got young kids, you got older folk. I mean, adults, whomever. They're coming into this hobby. They're going, Aaron, what do I do? Like this, everything seems overwhelming. We got Evan Mathis apparently saying there's this cabal of people that trim cards and submit them, and you've got everybody's arguing over which grading company's better, and some people say keep them ungraded and keep them raw, and you've got people fighting all over social media about who's this person and that person and what they should and shouldn't be doing, all these different like platforms and how to evaluate the values of cards. I'm confused. What in the world am I supposed to do?
Here's what I'd say. I'd say this. First of all, before figuring out all that stuff, which I think is it's a deep way to go. There's a lot of different options, as you say. I would just connect yourself with people that you share similar values with and that you think you can fit in a community with, and talk to those people and ask them what they think. I obviously can tell everyone what we do, how we do it, what are our recommendations, you know, based on what you want to achieve in the hobby and all this different stuff. But unless you know, physically think you can be part of that community or think you would enjoy yourself, like, I honestly wouldn't recommend you listen to, you know, I mean, I hope people listen to us. I hope people connect with us, that type of thing. But I think that it really comes down to you as an individual, like what type of people do you connect with? There is a wide variety of people in the hobby. As you can, I'm sure, tell between different people that break cards, how they react to cards, how they sell cards, everything, you know, there's a wide variety of people. So I just say, find the people in the hobby that you think that you're, you know, can connect with the best or be part of their community, and ask questions from there. If you think that Slab Stocks is a good place for you to be, because you love cards, you like researching stats, you like talking about players, you like talking about, you know, what gets you into cards, different things like that, and everything, you know, feel free to join our community and ask me any questions you want, or Nate, or anything like that. Join our YouTube streams and everything. And I'd say that's the best way to go. I mean, there's a lot of ways out there, no doubt about it, Dennis. You call it out, you bring it up. And I just think you need to go to the places that you think are best for you, and then go from there. And I think SlabMags is a great place to be for a lot of people. So that's why I like to see. But if you don't think you can connect with me, then that's okay too. You know, I'm not going to hold it against you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Aaron, for taking the time today to join us and to be on this episode and talk about your collection, your journey, slab stocks, the hobby, all of these things. Folks, you know, comment below if you have any questions, anything. Like, I'm sure Aaron will be on there. He'll be reviewing things if you have a question for him. But I highly recommend you give him a follow at Slab Stocks Aaron on Instagram. Go to YouTube, subscribe to the channel. They've got a lot of different content. They're great, wholesome, good stuff. Very professional, very professional. One of the best out there, one of my favorites. So thank you so much for taking some time today to be with us.
I appreciate it, Dennis. Thank you so much.
All right, again, guys, Sports Card Dad. You can follow and like and subscribe. Dustin's talking to you every morning with all this fun little videos and stuff like that. Follow us here, and yeah, just tune in for another show. Thank you for taking some time to watch, and we hope you all have a wonderful day.